I'm super excited about this next presentation, and we have yoga organizing and marketing, growing the Sangha at temples or other things. But we have Reverend Patti Oshita and Rick Kawamura. So Reverend Patti Oshita was born and raised in a small country town of Fowler, just out of Fresno. I think, yeah. There's a lot of people from Fowler here.
We know where it is.
Yeah. In 1985, she moved to Sacramento, and she worked for Congressman Robert Matsui for almost 7 years. She returned to school and received her BA in Humanities and Religious Studies from CSU Sacramento. Reverend Patti received her Tokudo ordination in 2003 and Kyoshi certification for the Jodo Shinshu Honganji Ha in 2007 in Kyoto, Japan. In 2012, after retiring from the California Department of Transportation, Caltrans, as a manager of HR department, she joined the Sacramento Betsuin as a program development coordinator. She helped Reverend Bob from 2014 to 2016, at which time they both retired. That same year, she and Reverend Bob accepted the position of chaplains for the California State Assembly, where they served for 4 years. By the way, don't forget the book, because it's going to be on sale. But it's written at the time during their chaplaincy at the California State Assembly. Great anecdotes there. And now she says she's retired and enjoys Hallmark movies and of course practicing yoga. She really wrote that, so. So that's Reverend Patti, and then I want to introduce Rick. So Rick really, one more thing about Reverend Patti is that her and Reverend Bob have been like great spiritual mentors to me personally, and we have a lot of fun discussing Buddhism and yoga and stuff. So they've been, I had recently met them. I had heard their names and stuff, but they're such great, wonderful people, so I really appreciate both of them, and they're so great spiritual leaders, so thank you so much. Rick, he really is the person who started this whole yoga with the Buddhist temples things, because we saw each other. We're from the same city, but I hadn't seen him in 40 years.
I saw you in Berkeley one time.
Oh, yeah, they were driving by in a car, and you go, "Hey, Bob." We hadn't seen each other for a very long time, and before the pandemic, we had a leadership conference here in person, and we were just catching up, and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm teaching yoga at the hospital, blah, blah, blah." And he goes, "Hey, why don't you do it at Palo Alto?" And he's the one that really came up with this idea of doing it at the temple. So really, and then that led to Sacramento. So really owe Rick a great debt of gratitude that we all actually wouldn't be here if Rick hadn't really lit the spark. He's a longtime member of Palo Alto Buddhist Temple, and he's so proud and happy that his mom and his sister are here. So I've known them my whole life too. And professionally, Rick is a marketer for both consumer and technology products, and has been volunteering some of his time with the BCA on the Technology and Communications Committee, as well as the Dharma Forward program. He loves to talk about marketing, so if you have any questions for him about your temple growth website or social media programs, feel free to reach out to him anytime. So Rick is really very humble about his professional background, because he goes all around the world overseeing international marketing. So this guy, you're talking about somebody who is at the top of his game in marketing. So that's why we're very honored to have Rick here as well, talking about marketing, and Reverend Patti. So without further ado, welcome.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, I just wanted to start off. I'm really honored to be here and asked to speak. Bob kind of explained some of the stuff of how I met him, but it was 3 years ago here at the Jodo Shinshu Center at the Leadership where we reconnected. And I guess the funny story is I grew up at Palo Alto. Bob's a few years older than I am, but he was this awesome basketball player, and everybody looked up to Bob and wanted to be like Bob in basketball. And then I remember, can I put this in? I remember at one of the services he spoke about his year abroad in Japan. And I thought, gee, when I go to college, I'd love to do that too. And so when I went to university, I ended up spending a year abroad as well. And I probably wouldn't have done that had Bob not introduced the whole idea of studying abroad at that time. And then we did, it was 3 years ago that we reconnected, and he was telling me about what he was doing with yoga. And then so, let me, I guess, skip to the first slide. So, how did we get started with yoga? Where did the idea come from? And as COVID started, actually that leadership conference was in February, and it was March where the whole country shut down. And I got this other picture here, but when you think about the Sangha at your temple and the value of the interpersonal connections that everybody has, coming to services and participating, and that all got shut down. And then thirdly, sitting at home and not exercising, you maybe put on the COVID 10 pounds or something like that. So when I thought about that, and at the time I was on the board at Palo Alto, and we kind of had this growth committee, but we really started to think about how do we continue to engage the Sangha when they can't come to the temple, when the temple shut down. And so it was really about, how do we combine the Dharma and the Sangha and just keep people engaged we didn't know how long this was going to last. We didn't know when the temple was going to open up again. And it just so happens that Bob and I reconnected, just through email, and hey, could we do a yoga program? And at the time we did a bingo for New Year's. We launched ukulele, taiko, crafts, kind of a dance and exercise thing, and also somewhat of a karaoke event where we call it sing-along. And I know Mountain View and some other temples do it as well. But so we just wanted to do all these different events that would engage our Sangha and get them together, even if it was through Zoom online. And so that was kind of the idea for doing this. And we're talking about marketing and also growth, but I wanted to point out that when you think about growth or marketing, there's two aspects of it. One is actually growing the number of members, but the other thing is you also don't want to lose people. In business we call it churn, but let's say you have 100 people in your group, and every year 10% of your people leave the group, so you're down to 90 and then 80 or whatever it is. So you have to add 10 or 20 more to just keep at that 100. And so at the time when we thought about the yoga, it wasn't necessarily to grow the temple or to seek new members. It was really about that, how do we keep our current members engaged and active? And so that was kind of the thought behind that. Did you want to say anything about just yoga in general right now, or do you want to? Okay.
It's all yours.
Okay, so kind of the next thing is, so how's it going, right? And combined through Sacramento and Palo Alto, you can see all the dots in all the states, so up and down the West Coast in Seattle, Oregon, all through California, even attendees from Hawaii, Denver, Colorado. I think I got these right, but Illinois, Michigan, Virginia, Massachusetts, and stuff like that. We have people calling in from all around the United States. And not all of them are our temple members, and not all of them are BCA members as well. So we're open to anybody joining, and a lot of it has spread organically through word of mouth, like friends inviting other friends. And I think that's wonderful, because people, when you have word of mouth, kind of a viral component to the growth, I think that's really speaks to the value that you're creating in your program. I have some numbers. I don't know if anybody can guess what these numbers are, but what the 65 represents is approximately how many people join combined across Sacramento and Palo Alto every week. The 210 is approximately how many people we email, that are on our list. The 30 is a percent. And so when Reverend Patti and I kind of looked at our list, is, well, okay, so how many of these 210 are actually members of either Palo Alto or Sacramento. It's about 30%, so maybe about 60, which means that another 150 are somehow found out about our program and have joined. And again, we weren't really thinking about growing the membership, so we weren't blasting it, and trying to recruit all these people. It just kind of organically spread through word of mouth. The 101 is special. That represents our oldest participant in yoga. So we have one who's 100. And I think that speaks to the quality of the program and Bob's teaching style, is that it applies to everybody, right? You don't have to be young. You could sit down and you could be 101 years old. And the 25,000 represents about how much money we've raised. And we don't actively ask for donations, but through the generosity of the attendees and the ashram donations that Reverend Patti put together, that's about what we've raised. And we could probably increase that if we proactively did more for that, but I just wanted to share that. So the next thing is, why has it been successful? And I don't think any of this would have happened, without Bob. And I know there's a lot of people here who had never tried yoga before, and when I said, hey, why don't you join? It's like, oh, I don't do yoga. I'm not athletic, or whatever it might have been. And the fact that we've been going on for 2.5 years, and all the people have stayed and continued. And when I have to announce, oh, I'm sorry, hey, we're not going to be meeting this week or next week or something, I get these responses about, oh, could you send me the recording, because I'd like to continue practicing on the weeks that we're not meeting. And I think that, if you were to go on YouTube, or if you were to search Yelp or something for a yoga studio and look for a professional or somebody to work with you, I don't think you'd have the same experience, right? And I think what Bob provides to all of us is kind of a unique combination of the Dharma combined with yoga, with meditation, mental, physical health, and it's all there. And I think each of you could probably speak to your own personal, why you love coming and what it's meant to you. So I really thank Bob for all of that. I did send out an email asking for people, little quotes here and there. I did receive several, and a lot of it has done with health. When people are traveling and able to walk and climb stairs and go to Japan, helping with breathing, with sleeping. One person separately told me that when you put your pants on in the morning and you have to stand on one leg, they would always have to hold on to the bed, but now they've strengthened their glutes and their legs. So there's wonderful benefits to what we've all experienced through yoga. I did have a couple of quotes that I specifically thought they really captured the essence of what we're trying to achieve, but also what the benefit that people are receiving from it. So I'll go ahead and read the first one. And this kind of relates to what Reverend Kohara was saying yesterday, is you have these stereotypical images of people and poses and wearing the Lululems or whatnot, but I had my own stereotypical thinking of what yoga would be like based on media images of blonde, ponytailed women with lithe bodies and cute outfits. So I was initially apprehensive about joining these sessions that we have with Bob. So it is somewhat of a shock that I'm still practicing 3 years later. I've never been an athlete, but yoga allows me to strengthen and tone my body in a way that doesn't require more conventional athleticism. And as I delve deeper into the spiritual side of yoga, I enjoy learning more about the relationship between mind, body, energy, and the connection to everything else in the world. Yoga makes physical and spiritual sense to me in a way that's been transformative. I'm grateful to Bob and Sacramento Palo Alto Sanghas for facilitating this wonderful experience. So again, I think hopefully that captures a lot. And secondly, another one was, in the scattered helter-skelter times, Bob's yoga sessions help keep those participating to stay connected and not feel isolated from others. I found yoga to have given me emotional agility and calmness in everyday living. Right? So hopefully that represents that. I thought, I just wanted to share those two with everybody.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning. And thank you for coming to this special event. I have very much been looking forward to meeting many of you for the first time in person. We have been seeing each other via Zoom for about 2 years now, but to actually be here together with so many of my Zoom buddies and to see you face to face is really a treat. During the COVID pandemic, with isolating and social distancing protocols, it was a great challenge, just trying to maintain our sanghas. Now we are entering a new time as we begin to reopen. Although at times we may wish for things to be as they once were, I think we all know that when great change turns our lives upside down, there is no returning to what was normal before. Since mid-2019, we have all been doing so much online. And I sense I'm not alone in having become very comfortable with this new norm. Through our computer, we've attended lectures in Japan, services in Seattle, Chicago, and Los Angeles, participated in discussions in Hawaii, all in the comfort of our own home and sometimes in our jammies. But as comfortable and convenient as Zoom events are, it is also very nice to be together in person as we are today, this weekend. So before I go any further, let me share my disclaimer. I would never consider myself an expert in the area of growing Sangha in the temples. So I just want to make that real clear. But what I can do is to share what I have learned in developing programs at the Sacramento Betsuin since we arrived there in 1984. And there's no doubt that successful programs help us to maximize our potential to maintain our Sangha and perhaps even grow. Of course, not every program will be a home run, but I feel our goal is just to keep trying our best. And most importantly, we can learn something from every program we try to develop. When we came to Sacramento in 1984, Bob and I enjoyed being part of events and activities at the Betsuin. And in the beginning, we participated and observed, but in time, as our members became more comfortable with us, ideas and opportunities to create programs appeared organically. And I have many examples, but for the sake of brevity, I will mention only two. One many decades ago and one that many of us are familiar with. It was about 31 years ago that 7 junior high school Girl Scouts or age girls at our temple asked if the Betsuin would sponsor a Girl Scout troop. And they asked if I would be their Girl Scout leader. How sweet, I thought. But I also thought how brave of them, because I would be like the Girl Scout Beverly Hills, no camping, none of that kind of stuff. But it was very sweet that they asked me. And our Betsuin had a Boy Scout program for a very long time, but nothing existed for our girls. And to this day, I am still one of the leaders of our Betsuin Girl Scout Troop 569. Pre-pandemic, we had grown from 7 girls to over 200 girls at one point. But now we're at 100. And this year we sold over 20,000 boxes of Girl Scout cookies. So I wanted to show you that back in 2012, this is a picture of our leaders at that time. We still continue to have about 60 leaders and volunteers helping to maintain our troops. We have about 16 troops under the umbrella of 569. We celebrated our 20th anniversary in 2012, and we took a group picture here. We were planning to have our 30th anniversary, and then COVID hit us, so we hope to have that in the next year. And recently, we had our first back to in-person Scout Sunday service in February with over 120 Scouts here. So you can see that we have Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, and Girl Scouts participating in this joint service. After retiring from state service in 2012, I officially became the program developer for the Betsuin. One of our most recent programs is an offshoot from the long-running program we renamed the Health and Wellness Series. Each month, we will have presentations on areas that benefit health and wellness. It was 2 years ago, in mid-pandemic 2021, that we arranged to have Bob Matsueda give us an introduction to yoga for our Bitsuing Health and Wellness program. In planning his presentation, we met on Zoom, and Yoga Bob asked if we were interested in yoga. Well, my Bob said, well, he was too old for yoga. And then Yoga Bob said his oldest student was 99 at that time. And so, we said, okay, let's learn a little bit more about yoga. And we realized that yoga can really help us improve our health at any age. So after just our first lesson, we were intrigued. Bob never laughed at us, as he watched us fumbling through our sun salutation asanas. Instead, he was so very encouraging. And how could we not help but continue? Very soon we found that we were just more aware of our posture and our balance, and we began to talk more and more about, how we felt better. And most recently, and more especially, we really appreciated how Bob was teaching us. And then one day we asked him, can you tell us a little bit about the history of yoga? And naturally, this led to the talking of the philosophy of yoga. Bob shared with us that the two main books of yoga are the Bhagavad Gita and the Yoga Sutra. And this truly piqued our interest and our curiosity. The Bhagavad Gita was one of my husband's favorite books to recommend to people. And I first read it over 35 years ago. And there is actually a funny story to the Bhagavad Gita, and maybe Reverend Bob, you can share that story during your time, because he does it much better than I can. I can't do the imitation as well. But to make a long story short, Bob's introduction to yoga was so well received that people inquired how they could learn more. And contacting Bob, he shared that he taught a weekly class in Palo Alto, and was delighted to see how many interested folks in Sacramento we might be able to bring together and to learn yoga. Our Yoga with Bob program continues to meet weekly, and needless to say, our being here today is truly testimony to the success of his programs. Now to the nitty-gritty of our topic, program development. Over the decades, here's what working on developing programs have taught me. Oh, that's my, here we go. Developing meaningful programs. 1, the program responded to a need felt within the Sangha. The program fills a void. So very much like the Girl Scout program, very much like Bob's yoga classes, there was a void, and these programs filled that void. They filled that spot that the Sangha really felt that need. 2, when our members request activities or programs, they would be more meaningful and successful. And again, that falls back to the 7 girls that asked to join the Bitsuing and form a Girl Scout program, and the many people who were very interested in Bob's yoga classes. Again, you get the commitment, you get dedicated folks that come on every week. And 3, programs are successful when led with positive energy and enthusiastic buy-in by many individuals. again, those programs do fit that category, but also having a Zoom technical support person is so essential for a successful program, and I can't begin to tell you how much I appreciate Stuart Ito. He is there for my yoga programs and for my health and wellness programs, and so Stuart, you know, and when Stuart's gone, then I have to fill in for him. That's when I truly do it. I can't believe all the little things that he does behind the scenes to make things work. So really, I think when we have that kind of positive energy and enthusiasm from people, buy-in from people, and Stuart is one of those people that is there every week for me. So I appreciate that. Having one person being a reliable point of contact helps keep the program and the participants together. And by this we mean having one person personally responding to questions and comments about the program, sending out friendly reminders to participate or to share any program changes and updates. This personal contact or this touch cannot be underestimated. For example, as people enter the Zoom room, be curious and really want to know everyone. Maybe find out where they heard about the program and perhaps what they're looking for. Take the time to develop personal connections with people. I know that we've made so many virtual friends during this pandemic time, and it's been rewarding. And it's something that I look forward to every Wednesday. I look forward to seeing those familiar faces every week. How was your week? What did you do this past weekend? Did you golf? There's so many things that that personal connection, I think, is just so valuable. And lastly, if the programs if the events or programs are in person, then food is essential. Food draws people, and food itself is also a great program. As you know, this weekend we are enjoying Ellen Hirahara's delicious meals. So I have to do my little plug that next Thursday at 6:30, Alan's going to be on my health and wellness program. He's going to be sharing green scallion, marinated beef, and quick takuan, and maybe some other dishes. So if you're interested, please let me know. I'll put you on the list and send you the Zoom link. So let me clarify that the Health and Wellness Series is a program that we have been organizing for years. And it too fits the essential things that we've learned about program developing. As I mentioned, it is a once a month presentation addressing our health and wellness. And I've tried to obtain speakers who are experts in their areas and share information with those who are on Zoom. So for example, I would like to show you some flyers for the next few months. So as I mentioned, next week we have Ellen Hirahara with favorite summer recipes. In July, we have two of our queens, Christine Yada, who is a 2022 Nisei Week queen, and her term's going to end in July, and then the 2023 comes in August. So I wanted to grab her and Casey Mukai, who is the 2023 NC Cherry Blossom Festival queen. Both of these girls came through our YAC program, and so we have a relationship with both girls, and it's amazing to think that you know both queens at the same time. So they're going to share community life balance and gratitude through the lenses of queens. And then in August, we have our financial planner, advisor, Derek Sale, and he's going to talk about how to prepare for the future. The series started years ago when we realized that there were so many sanseis now engaged in caring for our aging parents. We had a speaker who was from Hawaii, Francis Kakogawa, who spoke on the topic of caregiving and self-care, preventing burnout when giving care. And this evolved into what we call the Health and Wellness series. And we know sometimes a one-time presentation, like Bob's introduction to yoga, might evolve into a program of its own. Other topics we have had is coming to terms with loss with Dr. Satsuki Ina, heart health with a cardiologist, diagnosing dementia with a memory care expert. We've had many wonderful presentations. And I've heard suggestions that I should also consider automating the registration for our health and wellness program, where people can just enter their names and emails, and then it's all automatically fed into a database and generated into a generic response. But I really, truly feel that although it may take a little bit more work and maybe a little bit more time, that having that personal connection is invaluable. It is reassuring to know that there's a human being receiving their registration, and it feels welcoming to receive a personal response to that registration. So personally, I prefer that warmth of personal communication. Very much like what we like when we enter our temples. We like to feel that personal warmth when we go to our temples or visit any temples. So whether it's organizing yoga or any programs, it may take a little work and time, but I would suggest having one contact person to be someone who truly enjoys the program and interacts with people. So one final comment. What is interesting is that both the yoga classes and the health and wellness series have brought in folks from Hawaii, Chicago, and Denver, and other areas in California to watch and participate, as mentioned earlier. So although we may not ask for any fees for any of these classes, people are just very kind and they donate to the temple, or as Yoga Bob would encourage us, to donate to a nonprofit organization, a local food bank, or any place we feel worthy and in need of support. Oh, and one more final comment. I'd like to thank our Yoga Bob for bringing all of us together and having this first ever CBE yoga event. Last night after Alan's delicious dinner, we were scheduled to have an icebreaker, but it was fun to see that we were all just enjoying each other, being together, connecting, maybe for the first time in person, meeting somebody that you've seen on Zoom for a couple of years. And just being with friends we have made over the last 2 years, especially through Bob's classes. So in other words, there was no ice to break. So we look forward to many more opportunities to meet with everyone throughout this weekend. And now I would like to turn this session back to Bob, or to Rick. Sorry, Rick.
So the next section, I've been asked to talk about marketing and growing the temple, growing the sangha, and things like that. It could be a rather large topic. It could be very deep. It could be, we could take it in a lot of directions. I thought what might be more beneficial, because I hear people talking about Obon and fundraising, and this could be related to maybe your BWA luncheon on Saturday and you want to get more people there. It could be your temple email Maybe there's something in the temple email or the newsletter that you want to promote. And so marketing is pervasive pretty much everywhere. I think if maybe you look at these insulated bottles that we have, and there's name brand ones that you might pay $30 or $40, and maybe you go to Costco or Target and they have them for $5 or $10. And is that $30 one really 3 times better? Does it keep your tea warmer for 3 times longer? Or whatever it might be. A lot of that comes down to branding, advertising, awareness, and it's really about perceived value. So if maybe you're a Nike person versus an Adidas, and when you wear that shoe or the Lululemon, it makes you feel a certain way, and that's fine, but you're willing to pay more for that because of the perceived value that you get from that purchase. And a lot of that has to do with marketing and advertising, is that you feel faster, or you can play better basketball because you have the new Jordan shoes or something like that. And if that gives you confidence, that's a great reason to do that. But I would say that marketing is behind a lot of that. And so when it's kind of funny because I read marketing books for pleasure. I have Instagram and TikTok accounts because I want to see not what my competitors are doing, but how other people are using social media to grow whatever it is that they're passionate about. And so it's kind of somewhat of a science, but that's kind of the perspective. And so I wanted to try and make it as relatable to everybody, not just people who are interested in marketing. So let me get onto some slides. So the first thing is, to me, marketing is a lot like Buddhism. It's sometimes hard to understand, it's complex, it can be very rewarding. You could study it for a long time and feel lost. So, but that just came to me last night as I was thinking about this. And then, as I was kind of mentioning about maybe these water bottles or the yoga mats or Lululemon versus some tights you can get at Target or something like that, is the best product or service doesn't always win. It's often the one that's better marketed. So if maybe you think of a couple of boba shops that opened up near you, and you really like this one, and this one's better. It's got the better boba, or they use real milk instead of powdered milk or something, and this is your go-to place. And the other one there's always a 15-20 minute line. Why is that? And then pretty soon your favorite one closes, and maybe it's because the other boba shop is on Instagram, or they have a better Yelp review or something like that. A lot of this has to do with marketing. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it's not always about growing. It's not always about getting a new member. It's not always about selling more. It's often about, I spelled that wrong, but stopping decline or sustaining. And in the business world, we call that churn. And so like Netflix, if you're a member of Netflix and then, I'm going to be traveling, so I'm going to cancel it for a couple months, Netflix hates that because they're expecting your however much it costs these days, $9.99 every month. But so, and when they brief the analysts, they're like, hey, we have subscriber growth in this, but we grew 20%, but 10% of the people left. So the net is, we only grew 10%. And so as you think about your sanghas and things like that, let's just use some made-up numbers, but I have 100 members, but last year 10 of them are not members this year, and I only added 5. Well, you actually declined by 5% because now you have 95 members. So there's a lot of things that you can think about with marketing in terms of the numbers, whether you're growing, or maybe you need to just keep what you currently have. And a lot of that is about providing value. So, are you providing value to the people that are members of your team? So I just have this because I wanted to keep track of time. I'm not checking my text or anything. So marketing basics, tried to keep this general, but in general, if you look at these 6 points, so who is your target customer? So I wanted to give an example that everybody knew, but that I tried to relate it to, not sure which one to pick. Anyway, let me just go through the bullet points. But so, who is your target customer? Because that's going to determine what you market to, what your message is. If you're going to write an email, what is your subject line going to be to get them to open that? If you're going to send out a newsletter, what is it you're going to say? If some of the seminars that we have through CBE or the health and wellness, what are you going to put on that flyer to get somebody to say, oh, gee, I think I'd like to do that on Thursday night or Saturday morning or whatever it might be. So if you don't understand who your target customer is, then it's very hard to write a title for your email or your newsletter or whatever it might be. So you have to understand what they're looking for. And so, we could talk about maybe something like yoga, and we could talk about what flavor of yoga is, but maybe that person's looking for help with a health issue or something like that. So, you may be saying, hey, I'm this particular flavor of yoga, but that person's saying, oh, I want to be more flexible. And so your message might not resonate with your target audience in that way. So that's why it's really important to understand who your target customer is. As you talk about, I want to grow my temple. Okay, well, do you want to target the younger generations? Do you want to target new parents with kids? Do you want to target the people that were active in junior YBA that went to college that are currently coming to temple? Who you target really depends on what your message is going to be. And if, let's say you say, oh, I want to target the 18 to 35-year-olds, well, maybe you want to be on Instagram, right? If you want to target the older generations, well, they're not on Instagram, so and then where you target, where are they hanging out, and then what your message to them is going to change quite drastically. And that was kind of the third, is where do you find them, how do you communicate with them? And then number 4 is, when I talk about unique value, that's kind of a differentiator, right? So maybe go back to the boba thing, and why is your boba better than the boba store around the corner across the street, right? Is it health? Maybe it makes you feel good? Maybe it makes you look cool because you have a certain boba with a certain logo on the cup, and you're walking down the line and it looks cooler than the one across the street. And then again, your message again doesn't resonate with them, and it doesn't get them to take action. And so, number 5 is how do you attract, and we would call it convert them, but if you're trying to attract them to your yoga studio or to your boba, are they going to, I guess, make a purchase in that case? And then 6 is, I think, is important, is what is your goal, and when we talk about scale, is how do you grow that? So if you're talking about growing your Sangha, and it's like, well, we have 100 members, but we want to get to 120, that's not, that drastic of a change, so you might say, well, let's just work 20% harder. But if you really said, well, we want to go from 100 to 200 members, then you fundamentally have to change how you think about member growth. And maybe it's, well, gee, when you go on Google and you type Buddhist temple near me, you don't come up in those search rankings. Or you go to Yelp and you look at your own profile and gee, we only have 5 reviews. And it's a 3-star, just out of 5, it's only 3 stars. Well, you could ask your members to go to Yelp and write reviews for it and get that up to 25-star reviews. I mean, there's things like that you could do. So when you're on Yelp, and even at Arabon last year, somebody said, oh, hey, if somebody mentioned something on Nextdoor. And we went on the Nextdoor and searched Buddhism or Palo Alto Buddhist Temple or something, and we found somebody said, hey, I'm new in the community, I just moved to Palo Alto. Does anybody have a recommendation for a Buddhist temple? And they didn't necessarily say Jodo Shinshu or something like that, but people are on Nextdoor looking for recommendations. So you could be there promoting any of your seminars or temples or activities and things like that. So again, this all goes back to who are you targeting, what your message is, what the channel is, where are they hanging out, and does your message resonate with them? So if that person who said, hey, does anybody know of a Buddhist temple? And you immediately go to, oh, we're Jodo Shinshu or Shin Buddhism and this and that, they might say, oh, I don't know what that is, so I'm not interested. Whereas if you had taken a different message about, hey, welcome us, we're having an obon, we're having teriyaki, come eat with us, sometimes you just want to get them in the door. So again, it really relates to how your message aligns to your target audience and the value that you create. So then on messaging, so we redid our website in Palo Alto. I helped with the VCA website as well. And when you talk about messaging, and so I went and read or looked through a lot of the temple websites. And when you talk about messaging, there's a difference between what I would call what and why. And the what is, and I saw this on so many websites, it's we were founded in 1926 by Mr. and Mrs. Such and such, and they bought this house, and then later, 20 years later. That's interesting, and that's what. But is that going to get somebody to come to your temple and knock on the door and say, hey, I'd like to come visit a service, right? As opposed to the why is, and why could be anything, it depends how you define it, but and I can't remember what we put on Palo Alto actually. But we were talking about our temple is for everybody. To come as you are. We talked about the loving kindness. We talked about multi-generational families, and we talked about the activities that we have, because you don't know when somebody's looking for a new temple to join. You don't know exactly what they're looking for, right? It could be very specific to, I want to learn very much more about the Dharma. Some it could be, I have a new family, and I have kids, and I want to raise them in this environment. You don't know, so you have to kind of cast this broad net, and a lot of the temples use their website to message to their existing members about events and fundraisers and things like that. And if that's what you choose and that's what your target audience is, then that's a great thing to do. But if you decide your website is to attract new members, then you would put your events and your calendar on a separate page, because you want to use that home page and the real estate there to really focus on your value proposition to people who might find you. And there's so many, again, different flavors of Buddhism, is that you don't know, are they looking specifically for Jodo Shinshu, because their search on Google might have been Buddhist temple near me, right? And so I think it's really important to kind of understand how you think about the why versus the what, and how you message that. And then this is, I guess, so the thing to think about is what we would call the customer journey. So again, maybe going back to a boba shop, or maybe you're going to buy a car, or you're thinking about you want to play pickleball and you want to find a pickleball club near you. Your journey to deciding to join or not to join is kind of, it's a funnel. I mean, as you get more events, it's not actually a linear, top to bottom, it kind of jumps around. But the basic thing is that if somebody's not aware of you, then they're never going to join you, right? So if they're not aware of your temple, they're not aware of your boba shop, they'll not come to your store. Once you are aware, so let's say you want to join a pickleball club. You heard about it and everything, and you're like, well, I don't even know where to go. And so maybe you Google this, and you're like, oh, in my neighborhood, there's 10 different pickleball clubs. So you're now aware of 10. Maybe there's 20, but you're not aware of the other 10. And then so you're like, oh, well, I wonder what the difference is between these 10 pickleball clubs. So you go to Google and you look them up. You ask your friends, and you're like, oh, this one meets at night, but I'd like to meet in the afternoon. Or this one meets on the weekends, but I'd prefer to meet on a weekday. Or this one seems to focus on young, professional, really competitive one, whereas this one focuses on just getting out and exercising. So you do your consideration, which is also research and education, and then you say, well, okay, I've narrowed it down from 10 to 5. Now I'm going to go check out 2 or 3 of these. So now you want to kind of test it out, and this is where maybe you go to the club, and maybe they have a free day or something, and you go and you just meet the people, you meet the coaches and whatnot, and then you, at that point, say, okay, well, I think I'll join this particular one. And so that's kind of the customer journey, and you can relate that to joining a temple, coming to your own, coming to a seminar, things like that. One of the things I learned in my professional life is when I was at a company, we were selling cell phones, and we would do product placement in movies. And so we would get this, oh, hey, this movie with this famous person, and oh, when she makes a call, she's going to be using our phone. Like, this is awesome, right? This is so great. And then so, people, oh, gee, I saw that red phone, and this is really cool, and I'm gonna go on the web and look at that. And oh, okay, it gets great reviews and all these things. And then they go into the store, right? They go into AT&T, Verizon, whatever it is, and they go up to the counter and they said, hey, I'd like to check out that phone. And the guy, or woman at the counter is like, oh, really? Why that one? Wow, I saw the movie, I read this. Oh, well, okay, but for every 10 phones, every time I sell 10 of those, 5 of them come back because they get returned, because they're not as good as this other phone. Oh, well, what do you recommend? Well, I recommend their competitor. Now, so what happens is you can do all this stuff for the awareness and the consideration, but when it gets close, the further down the funnel it gets, the stronger the influence potentially could be. And so in that particular case, our competitor was paying the sales reps a bonus for everyone that they sold. And when you think of all the AT&T and Verizon and stores and the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of sales reps, and to come up with a promotion like that, it's quite expensive, right? So it's the same thing though, is if you are doing well on Yelp or Nextdoor, or you've built a great website, and then somebody comes to your door and they come to that first service, and nobody welcomes them, nobody says hi to them, nobody says, hey, why don't you come, we have some snacks afterwards, and oh, hey, by the way, next weekend we're having a fundraiser, or we have some bentos for sale, and then even I've heard that at some of the temples, people would love to help and volunteer, but the members feel bad about, oh, he's not a member, I can't ask him to come to the cleanup next weekend, but they would love to feel part of the community, right? And so if you could reach out to them and have those, kind of like the Walmart greeters, and maybe not just say hi to them and sit them, but actually sit next to them and answer questions. Oh, this is what we're doing, this is what this means. And we talked about this actually at that leadership conference a couple years ago, so what can you be doing in temple to welcome these new members? But again, that gets down to almost that trial part, where they're aware of you, they've researched you, and they actually come, but they said, oh, I'm going to maybe go to 3 or 4 temples before I decide which one to join. So if at that trial part you don't have a great experience for them, they might not come back, right? And so you've done all this work, and then they're right on your doorstep and you lose them, right? So there's this whole part, and then you could even add, this was the front end, but you could even add the journey, because maybe they come for 2 or 3 times and then they stop. Or maybe they come for a year and they stop. And so it's how do you continue to provide value to them throughout their journey, because maybe they come to you and it's just a newlywed couple, and then next year they have a young baby, and a couple years later they're entering Dharma school, and are you providing that value all along their journey? So I think that was my last slide, but I know some of you had questions. I'd be happy to talk about it here if it's helpful for everybody, or certainly at any of the breaks or any other time, and how to apply some of this knowledge of marketing to anything that you're doing at your temples.